This week in Pro Wrestling Podcast, Chris Jericho and DDP have an awkward conversation about gayness. Rene Paquette talks about her decision to leave WWE and their refusal to let her go. Matt Cardona shows us his toy room. Conrad Thompson missing in action. And a very rare appearance by the Joe Rogan Experience. This is the Pro Wrestling Podcast. And I'm Seth Grimes. And what better way to kick this off than with a clip from the greatest podcast of all time? Certainly the most famous podcast of all time, the Joe Rogan Experience, as the dead man. That's right, the dead man himself, the Undertaker, made an appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. I popped so hard when I seen that. I'm scrolling through my feed. I'm looking. I went through all the wrestling ones, so now I'm looking through my other ones. Pop open Joe. Let's see what's on Joe today. Mark fucking Calloway. Mark fucking Calloway, the Undertaker. I popped right up out of my seat, threw my hands in the air like a little girl, and proceeded to listen for about 3 hours. Awesome interview. A lot of the same shit gets said that has been said in multiple interviews by The Undertaker. You know, ever since he broke kayfabe, he's been going on this media tour, and he's been telling the same stories basically on every single interview. So a lot of this is repeat, but Joe has a way, just besides the fact that this is a long form interview, right? So that's going to naturally create more content than he would say in other interviews. But Joe has a way of talking to people too, getting the most out of them. And this was a really fantastic interview. A lot of fun stuff, a lot of repeat stuff, like I said, but a lot of new stuff as well. But this clip in particular was very interesting when Joe asked what he thought about the new stuff nowadays, if he's a fan of wrestling in its current form. And Undertaker really didn't, he tried to hesitate a little bit, knowing that he's probably going to get a little backlash for it, but here's what he said.
Do you still follow WWE now? Are you still...
Yeah, because I think, once things kind of start to lighten up, hopefully.
Can you enjoy it as a fan, or is it like, are you too close to it?
I try. It's tough right now for me because the product has changed so much, and it's kind of soft.
Are you gonna get in trouble for saying that?
Probably. I probably piss a lot of people off, but they need to hear it. I mean, it is what it is. But to the young guys, he's a bitter old guy.
Right.
I'm not bitter. I did my time. I'm good. I walked away when I wanted to walk away. I just think the product is a little soft. There's guys here and there that have an edge to them. But there's too much pretty, not enough substance, I think, right now.
Not just soft, but S-A-W-F-T, soft. But for real, Undertaker's got a point, right? Shit's not the same nowadays as it was back in my day, as the Undertaker would say. Great interview. Go ahead and check out the full interview, Joe Rogan Experience, available exclusively on Spotify if you haven't heard. But they do put the clips on YouTube and shit too. So check it out, though. Check out the full interview. You get the full rundown of every ache and pain Undertaker's ever had and all kinds of other shit. It's worth checking out. It's an interesting dynamic. Sean Ross Sapp did an excellent piece this week called Inside the Royal Rumble. It's an article on his website, which I did not read, but I did watch the video on YouTube. And it's almost as good. He's got lots of interviews that he's been collecting with different wrestlers over the years about the Royal Rumble specifically, and trying to get some further insight into what it's like to be a part of the Royal Rumble, how the Rumbles are put together, who puts the Rumbles together behind the scenes. A really great piece of work by Sean Ross Sapp. You can look that up on Fightful.com, or you can check out Fightful on YouTube. All kinds of great videos. But in this particular clip, Sean Ross Sapp is interviewing Duke the Dumpster Drose. That's right. Duke the Dumpster Drose, if you will, baby. And Duke was talking about how the Royal Rumble was put together, what he's told before he goes out there, how it works from a wrestler's perspective. And this is what was most interesting to me, but I encourage you to check out the whole video. Sean worked really hard on it, and apparently he's been working on it for a number of years. So props to Sean Ross Sapp. Love your shit. Check out this clip.
So you all go to the Royal Rumble, and you've been in a couple Royal Rumbles. How exactly are those laid out? Who goes and tells you this is when you're in, this is when you're out, and kind of lays all that stuff out for you?
Pat Patterson. Pat Patterson sets those up. He sits everybody down. Usually it's in the catering area, and he'll have like a big white dry erase board, and he'll give everybody the order that you're going out to the ring. Then he will tell you when. He will say, okay, you go out of the ring after you see this wrestler go out, and he tells you who's going to throw you out of the ring. That's basically how it works. It's like what number you go to the ring, and then basically what number you go out, because you watch to see and you go after a certain person, and you may make sure the right person also that throws you out of the ring, and that's how it works. And then the rest of it's just a big old mishmash in the ring, and people goofing off and making each other laugh, basically, is what it is, and ribbing each other.
Eric Bischoff on 83 Weeks this week talked about the very moment that he knew that he was in for a war with WWE.
It just changed everything. I knew that we were in a real fight. Nothing they did, nothing they said, billionaire Ted skits, all the shit that they did, none of it just all rolled off my back until this happened. Then everything changed.
And that really was the moment. If you could pinpoint in the Attitude Era where the shift from WCW moved to WWF, it was Mike Tyson. It was exactly WrestleMania 14. It was that moment, that era in time. That's when the shift started, because for those of you that weren't around back then or just catch up through the Monday Night Wars, it was fantastic to live through that. And WCW acquiring the talent that they did, and then the NWO and the Sting angle with the NWO really just captivated the wrestling audience and stole it. But by the time Mike Tyson and Stone Cold Steve Austin, you pair those two together, those personalities, and you had Shawn Michaels with his DX antics, it was fucking magic at that time, and it was just ready to explode, and you could feel it.
I think this might actually be my favorite version of DX before everybody else actually joined the group. What was your take on DX? Obviously, a lot of people think, oh, well, this is the WWF's answer to the NWO.
I think it should be pretty obvious that it was. It was entertaining as hell. I mean, look, they knocked it out of the park. I wasn't a big fan of Shawn Michaels' character in DX. I think he overplayed it. He tried too hard to be cute, and only by about 10 or 20%. It wasn't horrible overacting, but Triple H to me seemed a lot more natural at it. He didn't have to force it quite as hard. I think he was having a lot more fun with it. Or maybe it was vice versa. Maybe the reason Shawn overacted as much as he did is because he was having so much fun with it. But there was no question that it was a really, really powerful faction. The time was right. I think, I'm going to go on record, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. I think what got DX over more than anything, more than Triple H, more than Shawn Michaels, was Sean Waltman.
I agree. I think Waltman was a game changer. I think he did change the course of DX. I've heard a lot of people say they like the original DX the best with just Shawn and Hunter and Chyna, but I actually really liked the version once the Outlaws were in there, and when X-Pac came in, I felt like that's when DX was really, when I came on board with DX. You can check out 83 Weeks every single Monday, hosted by your man, Conrad Thompson, as he walks Eric Bischoff through memory lane. Chris Jericho had a big circle jerk on his podcast this week. He had DDP, Shane Helms, and some guy named Raphael on his podcast to talk about Chris Kanyon. Chris Kanyon, of course, was Mortis in WCW, and Champagne Chris Kanyon and all that other stuff. Here's a clip with Chris Jericho and DDP having a conversation about Chris Kanyon being gay in an era when gayness in professional wrestling was something that you wanted to keep quiet.
It's funny too, though, because we mentioned Chris's sexuality at the beginning, the fact that he was gay, and in this day and age, nobody would say a word, nobody would care, nobody would even blink twice. But even back 25 years ago, 20 years ago, it wasn't really in vogue to say that or whatever. And Chris certainly never did. But we still kind of almost knew it. Like, we used to hang out for those tapings that we used to do at Disney MGM Studios worldwide. And we'd be there for 2 weeks straight. You'd be hanging out and going to clubs in downtown Disney. And Chris was always hanging out, but he never was with a girl. And after a while, we were like, I wonder if he's gay. But no one ever asked him, and he never said anything. Did you guys ever think about that? Did you know he was gay, Paige, for example?
God, dude, I'll give you, when I told Kimberly, who's still one of my best friends, when I told Kimberly, Chris Kanyon came out, and she went, what? I said, yeah. She goes, wow. I consider myself that pretty good gaydar. And I never picked up on that at all.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many beers Chris and I drank that I'd never, because he's a regular dude. And that's what people don't understand. Like, someone like Sonny is a different animal. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's a dude. He was a guy like guys, but never even really picked up on it. You could say the same thing about disco, but I never really thought about disco like that either. I just saw like, they love what they're doing so much, they're preoccupied. Kind of like asexual is if I would have put anything on it.
So that Sonny's a whole nother animal, right? But Chris is just a dude. So what's Sonny? A chick? I guess, right? Maybe. I mean, he identifies as she just the same, but I thought that was a little bit of an awkward comment by DDP still, just the same. It almost kind of framed it like, this person over here, most gay people are freaks, but Chris was just a regular guy. Regular guys aren't gay, but again, it was a different era too, right? So look, there's not much more to say about this, right? But I do think the older generation should be just a little bit more careful about how they say things sometimes. That's all. Because it did kind of, to me, it just kind of came off like, almost like a little bit of a diss, So, shout out to Sonny Kiss with your chubby ass. You can check out Chris Jericho and all his awkward conversations about gayness twice a week, everywhere you find podcasts, Wednesdays and Fridays. He also had a really good conversation with a former cult member on Wednesday, so go ahead, check those out. Good shit. I stopped by the gas station this morning and I picked up 3 Bang energy drinks. Now, Bang doesn't sponsor the show, but we're going to start a thing here, I think, where we're going to try to will it into existence. You know what I'm saying? Have you heard of this thing where you can will things into existence? It's called The Secret. Read the book, motherfucker. Anyway, I want to will a Bang sponsorship into existence. I don't want the money. I don't want money. I just want cases of Bang energy drink piled up in my basement, just in the corner somewhere. So many, I am not even going to be able to drink them all. That's all I want. That's all I want. This morning I bought 3. I paid for them. I want the free ones, but this morning I paid for them. I got cotton candy and I got candy apple. Can you sense a candy theme here? But then to switch it up, I got the mango peach. Let me tell you something, brother. Bang energy drinks are the motherfucking shit. I am an energy drink fanatic. I know there's other energy drink fanatics out there listening to me somewhere. You hear my voice. You feel what I'm saying. It resonates with your soul, right? And Bang energy drinks are the shit. I mean, let's be real. There are a majillion energy drinks out there, right? There's all of them. And there's only a handful that are really got that mainstream appeal. You know what I'm saying? And I've always been kind of a Monster guy, and Monster does great with all their flavors too. But man, you get that Bang energy drink in you, and it's got that crazy ass flavor, that amazing flavor that none of these other energy drinks have. And you just guzzle it all down, and then you just go, it's fucking amazing. Let's will that into existence. I want to will a Bang sponsorship into existence. And speaking of will, Powerhouse Willie Hobbs was on the AEW podcast this week. A little bit shorter than usual. It was the first time I really noticed that this is one of the few podcasts out there that don't go over an hour. This one was just over a half hour, actually, which is what made me notice it. But then I kind of scrolled through and typically found that they were in with like, yeah, it doesn't fucking matter. Anyway, Willie Hobbs was on the podcast, and here's a clip of him talking about when he was in the ring and the lights went out and the Stinger appeared. Check this out.
Got a question from Dr. Scott Kelly on Twitter. Did Ricky and Hobbs know that Sting was going to interrupt their beatdown prior to everything that had happened in Sting's debut? Or were you just told there would be an interruption?
I wasn't told anything. If I knew something was going to happen, I would have been prepared. But shit, I mean, just I didn't know anything. I mean, it's Sting. Like it's almost like seeing a fucking ghost. Like I don't know. Like I still get chills and goosebumps thinking about that.
Yeah.
So just lights go out and you're just like, what the hell's happening?
You know, I thought, to be honest with you, I thought something like maybe some technical difficulties happened or something. And I was like, why is the lights going out? Is somebody playing around because they don't want Cody to get hit in the head with the belt again? I'm like, shit, take away my shine.
Did someone just tell you to get out of the ring, or did you just notice that everybody else was getting out of the ring?
So I'll tell you this.
Okay.
Sting was coming out, and I saw that bat drop. And I know when he has that, like, for me watching wrestling as a kid, when he has that bat, like, he doesn't fucking play around. So I'm like, let's go. Let's get the hell out of here.
Look, man, if I'm in the ring and Sting comes out with a baseball bat, I don't give a fuck if I got all my friends with me and they're all jacked and Sting's 60 years old. I'm running away from this motherfucker. Hobbs also talked about his contract deal with AEW, and Tony kind of chimed in on how the whole contract situation works over at AEW.
Was that right after the pay-per-view?
Yeah, it was.
So tell us how does that work for someone who comes from doing a couple enhancement matches to getting a full-time opportunity?
So I started off as a tier 0, and then, I believe I got that offer, I want to say right after my Derby match for the Saturday Night Dynamite. And so I was like, okay, I'm on my way. I'm going to make some noise. And then I believe the pay-per-view was like, I want to say maybe 3 weeks after that.
Okay.
And then right after I did my whole little thing with Mox, saving him, I got to the back and had another contract waiting for me.
Yeah, that's a big moment now for our listeners there. And I don't know what they are, and I don't want to really get into it. There are a lot of different tiers for talent in AEW. So when you're tier 0, you're kind of just starting out, but at least you're getting some work.
Yeah.
But then when you move up, it's like, I don't know if it's like full-time work or a contract. It's full-time work. So
you can check out the AEW podcast every single Thursday. Drops everywhere podcasts are found, of course. And I believe it's on TNT's YouTube channel, too. Every Thursday, it's hosted by Aubrey Edwards and the man, wrestling's dad, Tony Schiavone. Chris Van Vliet had Rene Paquette on his podcast this week, a.k.a. Renee Young. And they had a great conversation all about her career breaking into the media business and then into professional wrestling. But this clip right here is Renee talking about her choice to leave WWE. Check this out.
At what point did you start thinking about life after WWE?
A few years ago. So I would say it's probably, my timeline is always messed up, but I think it was probably like 2-3 years ago. I had asked for my release from WWE, because I was just sort of spinning my wheels, which is kind of where I ended up again when I left. But I had been spinning my wheels. It felt like there really wasn't much else for me to do there. I've been, I've been doing all the backstage interviews, hosting a bunch of different network shows, been doing commentary and coming off of commentary. Just all these things that I was like, well, I'm not a wrestler here, so I'm never going to get to really do what I want to do. I work for a wrestling company and I'm not a wrestler. So the things that I want to do career-wise, I might not be able to actually achieve those here. So I'd asked for my release and they would not give me my release, which ended up being a good thing because, it was like this whole drawn out process where I was like, I think I'm leaving. And it was like, oh my God, I remember the day that I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go into the truck and ask for my release and try to get out of here. And I was like,
of course they refused her release. I would have refused her release too. I don't know why putting her on commentary made any sense. And I agree with her. Couldn't just be a backstage interviewer forever, right? But WWE knew they had a fucking diamond with Renee Young, right? Because she's just a peach. And losing her was definitely a big blow. I mean, the machine's going to keep running, but Renee was very good at her job. And she's got a great podcast going now. She's got a baby on the way. And I definitely think more big things are going to come from her in her future. I don't think she's reached her peak yet because she's just one of those people that's just going to achieve at a high level. Her drive came through in this interview. You could really tell that she's destined for more than just being, the backstage girl or commentator or after show host for WWE. Of course, you can always check out Chris Van Vliet every Tuesday. He has rebranded his show. It's now called Insight with Chris Van Vliet. And he's also got a great interview with Grant Cardone. But this is a wrestling podcast, so we're going to stick to wrestling. So let's keep it at that. Speaking of Renee Paquette and her show Oral Sessions, Renee had a special guest on her podcast this week. She had the motherfucking man on her podcast. And no, I'm not talking about Becky Lynch. I'm talking about TK himself, Mr. Tony Khan, president of AEW, general manager, whatever the fuck you want to call him. I always love listening to Tony Khan interviews because he sounds like such a nerd. Everything he says, he just sounds like a giant wrestling nerd, which is great. I love hearing that. I would rather hear from an owner that's a fan of this at the same time and kind of wears that on his sleeve. So it's always good to listen to those. Plus, I always love listening to podcasts with owners and bosses and such where you can kind of get the insight from that point of view. I've always just been attracted to like the business side of it. I think it's fun and interesting. So it's great to listen to that in podcast form. Renee had a great interview with Tony here. A lot of the same stuff Tony said in other interviews before. But on the newer side of things, there's this weird little alliance that AEW's had with Impact Wrestling. And so far it's been working out, but why, right? Why the fuck would you even... Anyway, so in this clip here, Renee asks Tony Khan how the whole Impact relationship got started, and Tony broke it down. Check it out.
Okay, so now the deal with Impact, how did this come about? What was the decision going into like, all right, we're going to work together with Impact. We've got the Good Brothers running in.
This is Kenny's idea. He asked me about it, and I love good ideas, and I don't do every idea. I try not to do the bad ones. And like I said, that's been something I try to do a better job of. And also, I don't do every good one. Sometimes because I don't realize they're good because I'm not perfect. I make a lot of mistakes too. And I think that sometimes there are also good ones that just don't fit. Like, that's a great idea. You can't do it because that person's already doing this, or I can't do it because we have another plan that we're locked into. This was something Kenny brought up that I thought was a great idea. And he put a lot of time and thought into it. And I give 100% of the credit to Kenny.
Then Renee asked if Tony's going to continue to be an on-air character. You know, we've seen Tony a couple times now doing the skits with Impact with Tony Schiavone, and then he's appeared backstage a couple times in AEW. So it really was sort of concerning to some people that don't want to see that on-air owner being the boss on TV kind of thing now. So here's what Tony had to say about that.
When are we going to get to see Tony Khan as a regular on-air personality? Is that something you ever want to do?
No, it's not. And I've come as close to doing it as I will. I made a big exception coming out, and I thought it was the right thing to do, to be there on behalf of the company to express for everybody how much Brody meant to us. And I wanted to pay the highest respect to him that I could, and to his family, and to Amanda and Brody, and be there for them. But other than that, I've never come out and done that in that role. Occasionally, because of the story with Impact, there'll be times where I think it makes sense. Like Matt and Nick were this past week, for example, they were waiting to be introduced by Don. Instead, Don brought out Anderson and Gallows, the Good Brothers. So Matt and Nick were standing there. Where would they watch this? Well, they were standing right by the curtain. They would go to Gorilla, and they would stand there with me, and I'm not going to be thrilled about it either. I'm not surprised, because I knew what he was. If that makes sense, like that's why I looked at him and said, "Are you surprised?" They should have expected this from Kenny by now, but I'm not. I don't want to do that, and we have a limited amount of TV time, and we have a great roster, and there's a lot of other people that can be featured. And frankly, the character of the general manager doesn't need to be featured on TV a lot. You don't see I am the general manager of a Premier League team. You don't see me on NBC very much.
And that was Oral Sessions with Rene Paquette. And you can check out that podcast every Tuesday, dropping on anywhere you find your podcast. I highly recommend Renee's show. She does a great show, and like I said, Renee's just a peach, right? How can you hate her?
You know, I don't have any desire to say I'm going to hang it up or done, whatever, and do what. So I love what I do, and I love calling wrestling matches. And the fact that I'm having to adjust to 3 guys in a booth. I've got to adjust to a little bit different styles, different presentations from the talent. You know, I believe the wrestling business in general could use better selling, logical selling, not just AEW, but everybody.
Right.
Talent's getting too big a hurry, and then they worry about getting their shit in. And I just don't. I don't know. It's a different style than I've been accustomed to over the years.
Gotta sell better. Wrestlers these days gotta sell better in the ring. Look, JR's always got to slip in his 2 cents about how everything's different nowadays, and I get it. I do. But you know, I think he's got to kind of check that a little bit, because it carries over when he's on air and shit. You know, he'll just kind of make these off the cuff remarks, or little snide remarks, and little, you know, who gives a shit kind of things. And I think he's got to be a little bit more careful about that. The business has definitely changed since he was coming up in his heyday, but that's the evolution of the business, you know, from the smoky, dingy, barely lit arenas that he came up as a referee in. Was a lot different than when he was calling Stone Cold, spilling beer on everybody and people choppy pee-pees and stuff. And that was different than this era's flippy floppy high spot fest. You know, it just is what it is. Every era's different, and JR's got to kind of adjust to that, because I think he's being a little bit polarizing at this point. And he means well, he does. But when it's carrying over to on air, and you can hear it in his commentary, that's when he's got to kind of check himself. And I think old TK should probably do a better job of that too.
I never understood if Hogan and Heenan were friends or not.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it didn't seem like, for whatever reason, Bobby was not a big fan of Hulk's.
Even behind the scenes, even in real life.
Yeah, I don't know if it's 100% true.
Okay.
But I sure know that there was something there. That wasn't stirring the soup, you know, the beans.
Yeah, the beans and the meat. I got you.
Potential beef with Hulk Hogan and Bobby the Brain Heenan. You know, they always kind of went at each other, or at least Bobby was really negative towards Hulk on the mic, but that was all kind of part of the story, right? I mean, Hogan battled the entire Heenan family for most of the 80s. So, and then even before that with Nick Bockwinkel and not AEW, but the AWA in Minnesota, all that shit was just storyline. But apparently, according to JR, there was some real heat there, or at least he felt the tension. Quick side note here, JR's podcast was hosted by some other fuck this week, Conrad Thompson, missing in action. Not sure exactly what's going on there because we've also not had a Something to Wrestle last week or this week. It's been 2 weeks now since we've had a Something to Wrestle. So he was on Arn, he was on Bischoff, he was on What Happened When. So not entirely sure what's going on or if it's even something with Conrad. Could have just been a, scheduling conflict of some kind, but maybe the issues with Bruce, we're two weeks now without Something to Wrestle is a little concerning. At first I thought it was just last week when that episode was missed, Bruce's schedule with WWE and everything, thought maybe it was just something to do with that and we'd get a bonus show later in the week like we normally do when that happens. But 2 weeks in a row, no Bruce, and on JR, no Conrad. So a little concerned. Hope everybody's fine and everybody's doing good, and we can just keep going into podcast land. Conrad is one of the greatest podcast hosts of all time, and Bruce's show is just super fun to listen to. So hope all is well. Moving on. We got to take a tour of Matt Cardona's toy room. It's cooler than it sounds. It's definitely not lame in any way, shape, or form. I was a big toy guy when I was a kid too. I was a Hasbro guy. I kind of came into it just after the Galoobs. I'd seen some around. I think I had some cousins that had some, but it really was the Hasbro WWF figures that really got me into the game. But I can appreciate where he's coming from. I appreciate his collection. He didn't just go over his toy collection of WWE guys, rings, etc. But he also went over, he's got Ninja Turtle figure collections. He's got Star Wars, which I don't care too much about. I know, sue me. But Ghostbusters, just really great stuff. And it was fun to look. And it's something if I had $1 bajillion too, or at least, a millionaire close to it from, 10 years in WWE, I would probably have a room filled with nostalgia from my childhood as well. So check out this clip where he actually talks about Funko Pops specifically. And, Funko Pops are near and dear to my heart as well. And that's why I chose this clip, actually, because it talks about the addiction of Funko Pops and why. And he's right on the money. I have a bunch of them and I need more. Send me your Funkos.
And here are my Funkos. Talk about an addiction. These Funko Pops are an addiction. I found these online years ago because I was searching for Ghostbuster figures. And I'm like, ooh, what are these pop Ghostbuster figures? And then I'm like, oh, they make Star Wars? Oh, they make Disney? Oh, they make WWE? Oh, they eventually make everything that I like. So it's a problem. I realize that. You can't even see, who are behind certain characters. There's so many figures, absolutely, completely maxed out when it comes to real estate. But I love that in the same scale, in the same universe, you could have Slimer, you can have Marty McFly, you can have Zach Morris, you can have Zack Ryder.
That was Matt Cardona giving us a little tour of his toy room on the Major Wrestling Figures podcast. They also have a YouTube channel. Check it out. I want to be real with you guys here for a second. I'm not a tough guy, but if I were to ever just fight a pro wrestler, just punch a pro wrestler right in the fucking mouth, you know what I'm saying? Just out in the streets, eyeball gouging, just fucking war. If I were to step up to the plate and fight any wrestler on the planet, it would be Marco Stunt. Fuck Marco Stunt. Brian Alvarez had Joey Jannella on his podcast, Wrestling Observer Live, talking about an upcoming project that he's putting together, a 24-hour wrestling telethon designed to get the boys a nice fat payday during this era of COVID and no shows. Check out this clip.
So what we're going to talk about today is Fight Forever, which is GCW and Orange Crush teaming up. 24-hour continuous streaming professional wrestling event. I've also heard it called a telethon, which will be taking place on GCW's YouTube account January 29th for 24 hours. 100% of the proceeds go to the wrestlers. And you can head to Indiegogo.com, type in Fight Forever. $23,000 has already been raised for this. And Joey, tell us more about this concept.
Yeah, this is going to be, this is good. This is getting out of hand fast. This is going to be a big success. Out of hand in a great way. The wrestlers, the paydays they're going to be getting from this are going to be absolutely incredible. I can't tell you right now what I think the final number will be, but I think it's going to be way over everyone thinks it's going to be. So,
you know, what a great fucking cause. And props to Joey Jannella for wanting to put this together. He said he's not looking to take any kind of profit himself for this. This is purely a fundraising show, 24 hours straight for the boys, to get the boys a payday, and I think it's a great idea. And, you know, Jannella, this with his, you know, his AEW career is floundering horribly. So he may have to fall back on being a promoter, because he does seem to do very well at that, promoting these indie events. Props to that. Props to Jannella. Props to Brian Alvarez for having him on and plugging it. And check out Wrestling Observer Live. Brian Alvarez, Meltzer's on there quite a bit. A couple other dudes. Not a bad show to check out. Clips are on YouTube as well. Thanks again, everyone, for checking out the Pro Wrestling Podcast. You can follow me on social media at Seth Grimes. You can also check out clips of the show on YouTube as well as full episodes. Just search Pro Wrestling Podcast. Also want to thank our sponsor again, Anchor FM. And please go check out all the podcasts we talked about here today. They're all great listens. Until next week, I'm Seth Grimes. Peace out, everybody.